featuring Will Gavin and Master Tesfacian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Hello and welcome to the S Word, brought to you by talkSPORT and the talkSPORT S Word YouTube channel with myself, Harry Symeou, and Master Tesfacian. What another great day of football we've had in the World Cup. Sunday's action saw 19 goals across just the 4 games. We're going to be speaking to German football expert Sebastian Stafford-Bloor after Germany got off to an incredible start, scoring 7 past Curacao. We're going to talk to African football expert and friend of the show, Michael Lahoud. He'll be taking us through a massive couple of days for the AFCON representatives. We're going to talk to Kevin Hatchard. He'll be joining us as well to recap how some of the European sides have been getting on in their opening games. And we'll also be starting our new segment, the Fan Appreciation Society, to show you some of the things fans across the World Cup and the globe have been getting up to throughout this tournament so far. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
Bring your lunch, bring your dinner.
Delighted to say Master Tesfacian is alongside me. He's not here in the studio next to me, but he's joining us from NYC. How's it going, mate? How are you getting on your travels?
Oh man, it's been amazing. I'm in New York now. I guess I'm part of I'm part of the Scottish crew, I guess, for the day. They swept over and taking over the Northeast, and I think everyone's fallen in love with them. But I've been in New York. I got in yesterday, and the atmosphere has just been unbelievable. Huge watch party here in Brooklyn Bridge Park. That was sensational to watch. Some incredible matches yesterday, Harry, that I think the World Cup, we can officially say now, is truly underway.
Yeah, absolutely. It always takes a few days, I think, to get into kind of World Cup fever, just because you start to find your feet, you start to find your routine in terms of, picking your games and getting sort of sorted in terms of how you take them in. And as you say, it looks like from here anyway that across the States it's going down really, really well.
Harry, have you found a good sleep cycle yet with the late matches that you're having to watch across the pond?
Do you know what? Because I'm not as busy over the summer, it's been absolutely fine for me. The kickoff times, it hasn't been a problem. I've just sort of been getting on with it. I have to say, I haven't watched every single one of the 2 a.m s. I've skipped a couple just because when I feel like it's getting a little bit on top of me, I take a pause, take a breather. I skipped one of the 2 a.m s over the weekend, but I was up at 5 a.m. To watch Australia against Turkey. So I'm finding a way. It's absolutely fine.
That's a good balance, because that one, I think a lot of people slept on that one, and that ended up being a true shocker and stunner over the weekend.
Absolutely. But do you know what I always say? Sort of from the other work I do, I talk to a lot of Arsenal fans that are based over in America, and they often sort of say to me, well, you can't complain about kickoff times, during tournaments because we have this all season. And I absolutely
every week,
exactly.
4:30 a.m. for those early games in LA. It's not for the weak.
No, absolutely. Let's dive into some of the action from yesterday. Netherlands 2, Japan 2 was a very interesting game. I have to say, when I got to half time, I was a little bit underwhelmed. I was a little bit disappointed. I looked at the game and I thought I expected a little bit more from this. But once that second half started, it was very, very different. What was your read on it?
Man, that second half was unbelievable. Both teams just so talented. We kind of envisioned that this would be one of the matches to watch in the group stage. And yeah, you're right. That first half, some of the chances that were created to be 0-0 at halftime, we did want more from this match. And they gave us 4 goals in the second half in truly just extraordinary ways. And the first thing for me that I noticed when I saw the lineups was interesting from Japan was Ito on the bench and Sugawara on the bench. And it kind of showed at the start of the performance, seeing Netherlands getting the better of the chances and Japan still trying to figure itself out. Up until about the 40th minute, it really felt like Japan was feeling itself through this match. And Netherlands was able to take advantage of that with 2 great goal opportunities. Gravenberch connecting with Virgil van Dijk as if we were watching a Liverpool match and starting off the scoring. And then Somerville scoring a beautiful goal off the right side as well. And Japan just continues scratching and clawing and finding different ways to respond back to Netherlands. And that header, that equalizer, I mean, the most improbable situation that you could potentially see from Japan trying to equalize this game. They kept crossing the ball in the box, and clearly Netherlands had the height advantage. It just was not working. And lo and behold, on a set piece, on the final minutes of the match, they find a way to get the equalizer on a set-piece header over Virgil van Dijk, of all people.
Yeah.
It truly was an amazing match in that second half. And two of these teams in which, I felt like I walked away from this match probably feeling a bit more optimistic about Japan than I did about Netherlands. I don't know about you.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think Japan struggled in the early stages of the game, and I expected them to try and approach the game actually a little bit differently than they did. You mentioned that the equaliser, the second equalising goal, comes from a header, and I had been sitting there sort of tearing my hair out during the game thinking, why, and saying it out loud as well, Japan, why do you keep putting the ball in the box with height? You don't have the height advantage over the likes of Van Dijk and the rest of the Dutch defence, and it just felt like it was a waste of possession. But eventually they got their reward from that. Their persistence paid off. But I do agree with you. Like, I come away from the game feeling a lot better about Japan, who are often talked about as dark horses in these tournaments. Do you see them as legitimately that now?
I think I do. I was concerned with the Matoma injury when unfortunately he went down at Brighton and missed the tournament with the hamstring injury. I was concerned because Matoma just can give you that different, especially in those first 40 minutes. If Matoma was starting, I feel like he could have been that magician to help create some chances and alleviate some of the pressure off of Japan. And in his absence, it still feels like they're trying to feel out in terms of how that looks. But bro, they've got enough talent here on this squad to make a run and to upset and shock some teams. So without question, that was the biggest concern I had, was how would they be able to make up the absence of Matoma. But I mean, if you got Ito and Sugawara coming off the bench, which I hope in the next match that they are starting, because they clearly have been difference makers for this Japanese side. Like, this is a team that you do not want to face in the knockouts. It doesn't matter if they win this group or they finish second or even third. They're going to be in the knockout stage. This is not a side that you want to face. They are dangerous. They're relentless. They will continue to try and solve any sort of problem that comes their way. And that's the biggest issue that you come across in the World Cup is can a nation, can a group of players and a manager continue to be relentless in their ability to try and find answers to different questions that pop up throughout the tournament. And Japan has showed us in the past that they're capable of doing that, and they showed us once again here in the face of adversity that they are capable of responding in big ways. No, absolutely. On the Dutch, what was your read on their performance in general? I thought the first half was a little bit flat from them. They had that early effort where they forced a good save out of Suzuki, and you looked at that and you thought maybe this is a sign of things to come. But they struggled, I think, to offer much inspiration as an attacking force. And I don't know, I read some stuff in the lead up to the tournament where there was a lot of focus on Ronald Koeman, and there was a lot of talk about how maybe he is sort of making this team sort of play in a certain way that doesn't necessarily show off the creative talents that they have within their group. But in the second half, it was quite different, wasn't it? So I'm reluctant to sort of buy into that narrative. But what was your read on the Dutch performance overall? Yeah, they found ways to score goals. I think more so for me, I was disappointed defensively in how they responded when they took the lead. Because you look at that back line, man. Dumfries, Mickey van de Ven, Virgil van Dijk, Van Heck, and the depth that they have behind those guys. Like, with Verbruggen between the sticks. Like, this is a world-class defense. And if Netherlands is going to make a deep run, it's going to have to be on the back of their back line and their goalkeeper and being able to keep their shape and defensively being as stout as they possibly can be. And the way in which they responded each time after they took the lead, I thought that was the most disappointing part about their performance, particularly that set-piece goal. They were handling their business inside the box, time in and time out. And in that final moment, it's just that moment of a lapse that happened that allowed for the equalizer to happen. Like, the Netherlands cannot allow those moments to happen. And yes, who knows who's going to start at striker, whether it's Daniel Malen, whether Depay ends up becoming fit enough to make those starts, with Gakpo and Somerville scoring the goal as well on the wings. Like, the concern is always going to be if they have enough to score and if they have enough cohesion to score. But if they're not being able to avoid some of those lapses defensively, I'm sorry, this Netherlands team, as people have picked them as a dark horse, they're not going to make it far in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, when I look at the Netherlands team, it isn't the star-studded Netherlands teams that I remember growing up. And I think that nostalgia always takes over from me when I look at that squad and I look at that group. And I struggle to see how they're going to go too far in this competition. But you mentioned there, they do have some quality players within their ranks. So never say never. I can imagine where you are out in NYC, there was quite a bit of support for Ecuador who were also in action last night, quite away from where you are in Philadelphia, but they were on the receiving end of a narrow defeat. And looking back at the way that game panned out, I think they'll feel quite unlucky, actually.
They will. Honestly, Harry, I don't know how you felt about this match, but this was such an evenly matched game between... it was a very even game between these two sides, between Ivory Coast and Ecuador. In the same way I felt about the Haiti-Scotland match. It's just some fortuitous bounces, some opportunities that just did not go Ecuador's way in a brilliant match between these two sides. I mean, having 3 shots hitting off the post, which I don't think has happened since 1982 for a team. They were able to try and create some chances defensively. Ivory Coast and the speed presented some challenges for them as well. But ultimately, Amad Diallo was a difference maker. And in a similar way how I felt about Japan, I was stunned to see Amad Diallo on the bench. I truly was. He has been a difference maker for Ivory Coast all throughout World Cup qualifiers, and including in AFCON. This is a guy who has been part of this Ivory Coast team that, as much as we talk about Ecuador defensively and how great they were in come to ball, Ivory Coast didn't give up a goal throughout World Cup qualifiers. And so guys like Amad Diallo and Yan Diomande were the difference makers in terms of being able to create chances and goals for them throughout that run. And to see him coming off the bench, you saw how quickly he was able to change the game and eventually score the game-winning goal. But these two sides, Harry, Ivory Coast and Ecuador put on a impressive, tremendous performance in the first group stage. And I expect both of these teams to make it out to the knockout stage. And I would be terrified if a nation won their group and somehow has to face one of these nations as the third place team in the group of 32. Because I don't know who it will be, but I do not feel comfortable and confident that team will be able to make it out to the round of 16. These two nations have defensively, they have the shape, the form, the mindset, and they have the players and the talent to be able to wreak havoc in this tournament and make a deep run. So that was my biggest takeaway from these two. But I'm curious from your end, because I know everyone talked a lot about Ecuador defensively, and obviously Yan Diomande was just brilliant on the left side. We're both Arsenal fans. We saw Pierre Nkapie having to face him off there. What did you take away from from that battle and that duel?
I thought it was an interesting game. I thought both sides were really good, actually, in phases of the game. I thought the control between the two was sort of being wrestled from one side to the other. But I agree with you. I think both of those sides will be very problematic for anyone they potentially face in the knockout stages. And I think the format of the World Cup this time around, with so many third place teams as well who are going to make it through to the knockout stages, means that there doesn't need to be this huge panic when you don't get the result that you want from your first game, as would have been the case in previous editions of the tournament. So I'm still adjusting my mindset to kind of not go overboard when a team loses their first game or doesn't get the result that they want. I think with Ecuador, you saw power, you saw physicality. It was almost like a home game for them as well, which I think is going to be 100%. A huge advantage to them.
All that yellow in there, it was unbelievable. And all across New York, I was at a watch party, and it was probably a good 200-300 Ecuadorians at this watch party, and only about 4 or 5 people representing Ivory Coast. So you can imagine when that goal happened. It was a lot of stunned and sad faces, but those 4 Ivory Coast fans were just going absolutely nuts. But there's a huge amount of support that Ecuador gets all across this country, and they're incredible fans. You're going to see that all throughout the tournament, wherever they go. But even Ivory Coast had some great fans as well in Philadelphia as they were celebrating afterwards. So this group is incredibly exciting for me, because you've got these two teams, and you've also got Germany as well. And it's, again, I don't know how it's going to play out. Before the tournament, I predicted Ivory Coast would win the group. I still feel pretty comfortable and confident about that one at this point, but it could go either way. We could see Germany win this group. I could easily see Ecuador winning this group. This feels like the one of the toughest, if not perhaps maybe the toughest group in this tournament. With all due respect to Curacao, obviously these nations should be able to pick up 3 points and gain up on some goal differential with Curacao. But in terms of where the ranking goes from 1 to 3, my mind just kind of wrestles every day in terms of how this plays out. It is going to be 2 more incredible match days that we're going to see amongst these 3 nations.
Absolutely. Any of those teams, with maybe the exception of Curacao, with all due respect, can take points off of each other. And, Yan Diomande as well as a player that is being heavily linked with a move to the Premier League. Liverpool is said to be very interested in him. And I sat down with great intrigue when I was watching this one to try and understand a little bit more about the player. And I have to say he impressed and looked a threat constantly down that left-hand side. Just very quickly, while we're on the subject of New York, you mentioned the watch party, lots of people out and about supporting the team. What's New York looking like at the moment after the Knicks celebrations? Because you've got that plus the World Cup all in one city. It must be absolute carnage.
It is. And here's the thing about New York, it's similar to London, where so many things can be happening at once and you don't even realize it until you look down on your phone. I was enjoying the World Cup with thousands of fans here in Brooklyn, and I looked down at my phone and I see Alvarado Mamdani at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, which was in another section of New York, and it looked like an incredible continuation of the celebrations with the New York Knicks, and it ended up spilling into the area in Brooklyn which I was at, where as I was leaving the Ecuador-Ivory Coast match, a bunch of Puerto Rican fans in cars waving around their Puerto Rican flags, fireworks being popped off. Like, it is one massive celebration here in New York for many of reasons, with the World Cup, with the Knicks, just a beautiful day in the weather as well. The energy is amazing in the city right now. It truly feels like the World Cup, but also just sports in general. You're really starting to see the passion and the pride I think a lot of Americans have for sports, and in continuation with the World Cup, whether it's basketball, football. It's a massive nation, Harry, and we're known obviously as being a nation of consumers, but beyond just the spending aspect of consumerism, we also watch and consume a lot of sports. And I think New York right now is the epitome of displaying that. I mean, it's nations from all different parts of the world being represented. Even if they're not in the tournament, they're all here. And of course, the parade at some point, the Knicks parade on Thursday, which I've already heard a lot of World Cup fans that have come into New York City already. They're pretty excited about the possibility of being a part of this Knicks parade and seeing how New York turns up for the New York Knicks now that they've won a title.
Yeah, absolutely. Just incredible scenes across the city and across the states at the moment with the World Cup and everything.
But Harry, I can't go to this Knicks parade. I'll be honest with you. I can't go to this Knicks parade because I got to experience the Arsenal parade. We stormed the Emirates 3 times. This one is for the Knicks. I feel a bit conflicted. I don't know about you. If you were in New York, would you go to this Knicks parade after just experiencing what you did with Arsenal? Would you want to just check it out? I think
I would go for the experience. I think I would go to kind of fulfill my curiosity more than anything else. But I'm an Arsenal man at heart. That's never going to change. But from what I read and from what I hear, it sounds like there is some synergy between, what happened with Arsenal winning the league for the first time in 20 plus years, and then the Knicks, winning the title after such a long time as well. I think it's only natural that you get those outpourings of emotion, and that's why you end up with the celebrations that you do. Look, we got loads more coming up on the show. We've got Sebastian Stafford-Bloor coming up to recap Germany's 7-1 win. Kevin Hatchard's going to join us. Michael Lahoud will join us too. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
The daily deep dive into the world of football.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
S-Word's here. Just 2 hours of full-on football dialogue.
Every day,
talkSPORT presents
the S-Word.
Now, Germany got their World Cup campaign off to an incredible start after hammering Curacao by 7-1. Here's how it sounded live on talkSPORT.
And now a fascinating occasion. Curacao, the smallest ever nation to play at a World Cup, up against the 4-time winners, Germany. Hatchard maybe thought about the shot, but finds Wirtz, and then the shot is slotted in superbly by Hatchard, and Germany have the lead with 5 minutes played inside the penalty area for Curacao, and then Comaneci scores, and Curacao have their first goal at a World Cup final. Labano Comaneci with a moment of history for Curacao as the corner is played in, and it's glanced in, and Germany retake the lead. Havertz steps up and he scores very comfortably, right-footed into the corner. Musiala with a low shot, brilliant goal. He was playing a different sport to Curacao there. Breaks for Undam, and it's flicked on and finished brilliantly by the fullback, Nathaniel Brown. Kimmich just takes a touch into Undam. It's 6 goals now for Germany with 6 different scorers. Freaking clear, Havertz clips in a beauty. A lovely dink over the head of Room, and Germany have their 7th.
There's the final whistle, it puts them out of their misery. In the end, they were out of their depth. They started well. You have to hand it to Germany now. That's a real message of intent.
And Germany are the first big nation to really cut loose at the 2026 World Cup. Full time, Germany 7, Curacao 1.
I'm delighted to say joining us now is good friend of the show and German football expert Seb Stafford-Bloor. Seb, welcome. How are you?
A bit sleep deprived, to be honest. I'm trying to stay up. I'm trying to watch the games. You know what? The realization, I'm just old now. This is the stage of life that I'm at, I'm afraid.
Me too. I've had to on a couple of nights, guys. I've had to get up at half-time of one of the late games and literally go and wash my face to wake myself up again. Like, that's the stage of life I'm at, where I cannot last the distance anymore without some sort of intervention. Look, Seb, Germany have had some shaky starts to recent World Cups, so there will be a sense of relief at the fact that they were able to win as convincingly as they did, in particular against Curacao. But it wasn't without its moment, was it, when Curacao managed that equaliser? What was your kind of view of the general performance and outcome from a German football perspective?
Yeah, you're right. They've had some shaky starts. They've had some shaky finishes too in the last 2 World Cups, because they've obviously had the back-to-back group stage exits, and that's been hanging over the national team ever since. And I think, the group stage is a little bit easier than it might be, and also the qualifying format, which means that even in a 3rd place finish, you're probably quite likely to go through. So that gives you a bit of grace. But there was a really funny moment. Probably not if you're German, but when Curacao equalised, there was recognition in the German commentary of what a great World Cup moment it was. It was great excitement, but there was that about sort of 20-30% of embarrassment going on in there as well. But I think, heading to the game, a lot of German fans would have said to you, right, so we look pretty good in attack. We're better at creating chances than we have been for a long time, but we've got some gremlins in defence, not necessarily with the individual players, but just how we defend as a team. And I think even Curacao were able to expose some of those. I know that obviously the game finished in quite a one-sided way, but before I think what we'll call the advert break rather than the hydration break, before the first one of those, and after after Curacao had equalised, they looked pretty dangerous on the counter. A few better decisions, and they might have had some chances, and that's a little bit worrying. And I think if you imagine a stronger team with some slightly more high-powered individuals in those situations, Germany could be in trouble. So we entered with a few questions, and we left the game with a few questions. So we're kind of where we were before the game started.
Master, what was your sort of view on Germany's performance? Because I agree with Seb there. There were moments where you looked at this German side and you thought there's great fluency, they're playing brilliant stuff. But there were a few moments where you thought they looked a little bit vulnerable as well. What was your kind of assessment of their overall display?
Yeah, I thought when Czechia scored, I thought this they would run away with this thing 6-0. And then once Curacao, as you mentioned, had some couple chances and scored pretty effortlessly, that 15 minutes, the smallest nation ever in the World Cup, scoring against the 4-time World Cup title winners. I needed those 15, 20 minutes to just wrap my head around what I'm watching. But in the end, obviously, Germany ended up taking over and winning 7-1 once again, as they're accustomed to doing, I guess, in these World Cups. But for Seb, you mentioned, though, that there's still the same questions that you probably had coming into this match. And if there's a better opponent or better side defensively, there's those concerns you have. Well, you've got Ecuador and Ivory Coast coming up next. How is the sentiment now, if that was kind of the idea coming out of this Curacao match, and that you have two nations that do look pretty impressive, in terms of what's the sentiment now amongst Germans in this group?
Yeah, an interesting one, Master, because it's tempered against what I said before, which was that, you know, you're not going to get a group stage elimination probably after you win one of your games, and especially not if you've racked up a big goal difference relative to some of those other third place sides. So there's that security. I think there's been a great deal of respect for what Ivory Coast and Ecuador are bringing into this tournament, and certainly more so after their game yesterday. Nobody in Germany needs telling how good a player Jan Diomande is. I know you don't as a Bundesliga watcher, so that was no surprise at all to see just how potent he looks and how dangerous Ivory Coast seem. But you know, on a different day, Ecuador could have won that too. And I think instead of being a group where you've got one strong favourite, Germany, I think you've got three teams really vying for top spot. And because Ecuador lost, they're probably they got their backs up against the wall a little bit for qualification. But yeah, nobody in Germany is taking anything for granted. Maybe if you were going back, I don't know, 20 years, you'd find a lot of people said, well, of course the Germans will be in the semi-final. That's what we do, right? That this is a kind of a German pastime just to get to the latter stages of international tournaments. A lot of that stuff has gone now. There's a lot more humility. There's a lot more fear. And actually, as a country, before the game, and I imagine before the game against Ivory Coast, a lot of the debate will be focused on some of the shortcomings we've mentioned. What can they do to shore themselves up in transition? Is that centre-back pairing good enough? Was the decision to recall Manuel Neuer a good one? These things tend to occupy the German mind a little bit more than, right, how can we overpower you with efficiency and rather kind of practical football. That's kind of a little bit of an anachronism and an old generalization. So yeah, there'll be some German angst between now and then, I'm sure.
I think you're going to get that, though, aren't you, with the bigger footballing nations where, you know, they're winning games against sides that they're fancied to beat. And so a lot of the kind of the aftermath and fallout, if you like, is going to be around what they can do better, because the standard has been set very, very high in years gone by. I was really impressed with the performance from Kai Havertz. Even if I take my Arsenal hat off for a minute, I thought him playing up front was really key to the German side, because I think what Kai Havertz does better than a lot of other strikers, and I know he's not always the most clinical finisher, although you wouldn't say that based on yesterday, is that I think he ties the play together brilliantly. And you look at that front four, Sane, Musiala, Wirtz and Havertz in there as well, and what you've got is a really connected unit of very technical, very clever players. That could be key, couldn't it? But with Havertz in particular, do you think they need to protect him a little bit just because of the fitness issues he's had all season? I mean, I was watching the game yesterday sitting there thinking, get him off, the game's won. Yet he stayed on the pitch. I worry that they might just push him that little bit too hard and it might cost them further down the line.
I think it's a great point. Without Havertz, it doesn't really work. And this is why he's proven to be such a big Julian Nagelsmann favourite historically since Nagelsmann took over the national team, because when you've got the attacking midfield talent that Germany have, no doubt that a lot of their attacking potency is based around Musiala, Wirtz, what they can do. But without Havertz, you're an Arsenal fan, so you know this, without his movement, without his ability to open doors for some of his teammates, it doesn't work quite as well. And yeah, I think you've seen that already. Havertz's finish for Germany's 7th goal was sublime, of course. But I think if you go back to the preparatory friendly against the US men's national team in Chicago last week before the tournament began, if you see his work for Leroy Sané's goal, ultimately the winning goal in the game, there aren't many other German players who can do that, who see that pass around the corner, who can receive the ball, have such good technique to kind of weigh up the situation and make a decision. So you're absolutely right. If Havertz is overplayed, having gone through a season of kind of intermittent involvement, then you know that's going to be a little bit tricky. What I would say is that don't sleep on Dennis Undav. Undav is known as a goal scorer. Nobody other than Harry Kane scored more Bundesliga goals last season than he did for Stuttgart. But Undav is a little bit more of a facilitator than he's given credit for. In fact, there was a conversation prior to the game against Curacao about whether given Jamal Musiala's struggle for fitness and form, whether Undav wouldn't be a slightly better option in the kind of number 10 role. Jurgen Klopp wanted to do that, and that kind of created a big old argument around Julian Nagelsmann before the tournament, which spilled out into the German media. But the point stands, right, is that you have this guy who can do some of the same things, maybe not to the highest to a standard as high as Havertz, but he is a little bit of a he's a little bit of a substitute. He can kind of double up on some of those things. So it's not the end of the world. It's not one of those tournaments where Germany are going in, and if plan A with Havertz doesn't work, then, the sky falls in on everybody. But he is important, and the chemistry he has with Musiala and Wirtz is undeniable. It's really not a coincidence that they're playing at a higher level than either did for Bayern Munich or Liverpool for a long time this season. So yeah, matters a great deal. So the thing is, though, and you raise another interesting point, you don't have the option necessarily there aren't as many soft games. I know qualification is a bit easier, but this isn't it's an expanded World Cup, but there's talent everywhere. And so you can't take opponents lightly. So it's very, very difficult if you're in Nagelsmann's position.
Yeah, and I'm glad you highlighted Undav, because there wasn't much to really take away from that second half. But seeing that chemistry that you mentioned with Undav scoring a goal and getting 2 assists, that was something to just kind of tuck away in the back, and the chemistry that he was able to have with that midfield in terms of the different chances and different lineups and different abilities that Germany has to try and solve different questions that will come up in this tournament. But maybe I've spent too much time in Germany, and maybe I've spent too much time in Europe, but I want to keep harping on the criticisms and the flaws of this team that we saw. And I want to go back to what you said about the center back situation, because we talked about it going into this tournament about who would be the center back pairing. They went with Todd Schlotterbeck, with Rudiger coming off the bench. Did that goal kind of seep in more doubts or more questions about if this is the proper center back pairing for Germany?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not convinced it's necessarily centered around Schlotterbeck and Tah. I think it's about the ability to handle transitions, because, I'm with you. I think there are flaws to both players. I think Schlotterbeck is probably an outstanding footballer, but only a very good to good defender. Tah is, I think, a bit more of a generalist, but I think there's a little bit of a lack of pace there, which can be exposed by the truly dynamic players. I think the commonality that you can trace back really from 2018 through 2022 in all the tournaments in between and all the kind of the friendlies and the Nations League games, Germany just cannot handle transitions, and that's the thing that has to be cured, and that actually has survived different coaches. So Jogi Löw, Hansi Flick, and Julian Nagelsmann. It's got better under Nagelsmann, but it's really hard to know. I don't think. One of the strengths that Germany had historically were outstanding centre-backs, right? That's what you think of. You think whether it's a Matthias Sammer, Jürgen Kohler, Mats Hummels, Per Mertesacker, like they always had that guy. Whether that allowed them to do slightly different things in midfield and have that dependability, I don't know. Let's be honest, I'm not smart enough. I'm not tactically smart enough to answer that. No, I'm really not. No, it's really not false. It's not a false modesty. I promise you. I just don't know. But it's a problem and it needs solving. And so that's the thing. And I think it's also, in a funny kind of ironic way, it kind of protects some of those individual players, because we're so used in this country to saying, well, there's a defect in the system, right? There's a little bug somewhere that we need to deal with, that you kind of think, well, like would they, if they had the sort of the defensive strength of the past, would it matter quite as much? I don't know, but that is the thing that needs curing, because this is going to be the ceiling on Germany's progress through the tournament. Because if you come up, hey, Christian Pulisic gave them a hard time when they played the US men's national team, and I think he's a very good player. He's not the best player in the world, and those guys are lurking. Look at what Yan Diomande did against Ecuador. The guy's playing, he's in the form of his life and looks every inch €100 million player. So these are on the agenda, and they've got bright flashing asterisks next to them. These issues need to be resolved.
I think it's really interesting to hear you talk about that issue, actually, because when I sort of was watching the game and I see that happening, I see Germany looking a little bit vulnerable in the transition, my instinct was to go, Yeah, but they're playing Curacao, with all due respect to Curacao, and therefore they're taking greater risks positionally, and they're squeezing higher up the pitch because they know that, they are the better of the two sides. Whereas when they come up against bigger and better opposition, maybe the approach changes, and maybe that's not as much of an issue. But it sounds like, from what you're saying, Seb, this is a problem that's been lingering on in German football, in the national team anyway, for quite some time.
Yeah, and I think also, and this is me guessing, so this is going to be my attempt at answering the question and giving you a tactical diagnosis. I think you've got a lot of young players in key positions. So if you go through it, Alex Pavlovic has become quite experienced at Bayern Munich, still a very young guy. Felix Mecha, in international terms, really inexperienced, even though he's a seasoned Bundesliga player. Nagelsmann has brought in Nathaniel Brown, the fullback. Brown is in there because he can invert as a fullback and become like an extra midfielder when Germany have the ball and when they're trying to create numerical superiority through the middle of the pitch. But you have these guys who, all of them play in the Bundesliga, which is a very transition-heavy league where for their teams, particularly if you play for Borussia Dortmund, particularly if you play for Bayern Munich, I think you're used to having ball dominance. You're used to kind of having much more threat than your opponent. And so that when you switch up and you play internationally, I think it's a little bit different. That's a complete guess. And, not to invite people on the internet to shout at me, but if I'm wrong, I don't really want to hear about it. But that's kind of like with my layman's hat on, that's what I think. Maybe, if there was a little bit more exposure to, for instance, not to be, an English-centric pundit in any way, but if you were just to expose some of those to, the Premier League environment where every team has a pretty heavy punch to give it to throw at you, then maybe some of those issues go away. I don't know. That could be absolute nonsense, guys, as far as I'm concerned. But it's my guess.
I think there's a point to it. And as you mentioned, Nathaniel Brown was another player like Undaf that I thought showed his quality and his capabilities starting over.
He was great. He was really good.
Yeah. But as you mentioned, having the center backs with like Todd that maybe don't have the pace to make up for the space that they have to account for in those transitions. We've seen it with the inverted fullback situations a lot of times throughout the Premier League and throughout Europe. If you don't have a good center back pairing, you can get caught off guard very quickly by guys like Jan Diamande, who obviously I want to make sure we end this note on and talk about Jan Diamande and his performance that he had. Maybe a lot of people have heard a lot about him through the summer transfer window and maybe haven't had a chance to really see his quality and talent. But he was on display against Ecuador, as we've seen time and time again, Seb, throughout the Bundesliga. What do you think this does for his $100 million price tag this summer? Is he worth the hype?
Oh, yeah. The thing I like about him, and we could do a separate show on this, the thing I like about him is that he can receive the ball at a standing start and he can be faced up against 1-2 defenders and he's still a problem. He's still a problem because his ability to beat players is so varied and diverse. He's good on the right foot. He's good on the left foot. His acceleration from 0 to 60 is so quickly. Well, not 0 to 60. That would make him worth much more than 100 million euros, right? You know what I'm saying? He's got everything. And also, one thing I know, and I know you're going to have Kev Hatchard on later. He'll know better than me. He improves so quickly. If you look back at the player he was at the beginning of the Bundesliga season and compare the player he was at the end of it, the rate of improvement in a young guy is absolutely remarkable. And so what you're seeing is just the beginning. So if you're talking about price tag and whether he's worth it, well, you're investing in someone that is still getting better at an alarming rate. He's a terrifying prospect, really.
Seb Stafford-Bloor, thank you so much for joining us, mate, and for your fantastic insight as always.
Much love, Seb.
Cheers,
Thanks
mate.
for having me, guys.
Get some sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Get some sleep, for sure. Still to come on the show, we're going to be joined by Kevin Hatchard.
How are we, chaps? Well,
Michael Lahoud. You're watching The S Word, sponsored by Kausch.
Around here, we only use the F word.
talkSPORT presents
The S word. people who love football in North America. And I mean the proper kind, where you only use your feet.
The S Word
From talkSPORT.
Welcome back to the S Word, powered by talkSPORT. It's been a relatively strong start for the European sides so far in the World Cup, with a couple of statement wins for Germany and Sweden. The Dutch will be frustrated at letting a 2-1 lead slip last night against Japan. And tonight's action will see Spain and Belgium take part in their opening matches of the tournament too. So who better to have on the show than talkSPORT's European guru, the host of the Trans-Euro Express, Kevin Hatchard. Kev, how are you?
Yeah, very well, mate. Very well. Enjoying the tournament so far. It's been great fun.
How are you sleeping, seeing as that seems to be the question of the day? How are you getting on with the late nights?
Yeah, just about managing. Just about managing. I think the key is you'd love to watch everything live, but as long as you watch it in its entirety, you can kind of get away with it. So you balance everything out. You work out prep for games. You work out different things. So it's fine. It's better than a real job, put it that way.
Absolutely. Spoken like a man with plenty of experience. Kev, let's talk about the Netherlands 2, Japan 2. We touched on it a little bit earlier on. Myself and Master sort of shared our thoughts on that one. What was your kind of take on the game? Because there were points where the Dutch looked completely in control. There were times where Japan looked like they were struggling. In the end, the points were shared. What was your assessment of the game overall, and what are your takeaways from it?
Yeah, I think with the Dutch, sometimes it looked like they were in control, but actually to me it looked quite pedestrian and quite plodding at times, the pace of play. I can understand why they would want to keep possession. I know they were very aware of what Japan can do on the counter-attack with the pace that they have. But I think I would have liked to have seen the Dutch go into a higher gear at times. Similar scenario to what we've seen in some of the build-up matches, actually. Just a lack of a real clinical edge at times in front of goal. I know Virgil van Dijk took his goal very well, and it was an excellent strike from Somerville for the second goal. But Daniel Marlon, who I like very much, you know, getting into good positions and not quite finding that finish. I just think there's more to come from them in the final third. I thought Memphis Depay came on and looked way off it to me. So I think there's still more to come from them. Japan, I thought, were exceptional once they'd gone behind. And it was interesting, actually, because Hajime Moriyasu, the coach, said afterwards he was quite disappointed with the result. And I think what he'll be most disappointed by is that we only really saw the real Japan after they'd gone behind.
Yeah, that was the interesting part. And there was some line. I thought Ito would have started. I thought Sugawara would have started, and they give him a bit more of attacking flair at fullback and up top as well. And when they came on the pitch, you saw the difference in those final 20 minutes. But for Netherlands in particular, you look at this back line and you look at the goalkeeper situation, and you're thinking, man, this has to be one of the best back lines of this tournament. And continuously, when they had a goal advantage, they had those defensive lapses. What do you take from that, considering how Japan was obviously a very tough opponent inside? Is that something to be concerned about moving forward with the Netherlands?
I think a lot of it is more that Japan are a very good side, especially in those wide areas. And we saw that, especially down that left-hand side. The one thing I would say, actually, is I think the jury's still out on Verbruggen. I know he's good with the ball at his feet. I know he's a young goalkeeper with a lot of potential. I still feel he makes a fair few mistakes, if I'm honest. And I know it was difficult because it was deflected, the second equaliser, but I thought he could have done a little bit better with that. I know he's not fully fit. I know it was a race against time to get him fit for that game. So I still think there's a little bit of a weakness there. And yeah, I think it's more a structural thing rather than individual defenders. I was surprised how easily at times Japan were able to open up space, especially in those wide areas.
Yeah, for sure.
So who'd you rather start at goalkeeper? Real quick, who would you rather start at goalkeeper? They've got so much talent with Flekken and Roves. Who would you rather have than Verbruggen between the sticks for the Netherlands?
Flekken, I'm not an enormous fan of. I think he's a good goalkeeper. I don't think he's an elite goalkeeper. I put him in that same bracket of will make mistakes. I'm a huge Roofs fan. I think he's brilliant. I think he's really aggressive. I love the way he comes for the ball. Very athletic in terms of the saves that he can make, that wingspan that he has. I think he's had a brilliant season for Sunderland. I know he's not a huge name per se, but I think he's a top goalkeeper, and I think if he came in, he'd have no trouble at all. So, I'm not necessarily angling for Verbruggen to get dropped, but I think that's one to keep an eye on, because I do think there is a mistake in him. And you see that with other goalkeepers around the tournament. They'll make brilliant saves, but one will just sneak through them every so often. And I think Verbruggen's definitely got that at this stage.
Kevin, if we turn our attention to some of the games taking place today, obviously Spain kicking off their campaign. Do you expect them to kind of pick up where they left off from the European Championships? There's a lot of people saying that they could well go on and win, a World Cup off the back of a European Championship and put the two together again, something they've done in the past. They played Cape Verde today. It feels like this should be one-way traffic.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Cape Verde have done a brilliant job to qualify. To finish ahead of Cameroon in their qualification group was phenomenal. Babista has done an incredible job as coach. It's almost a bit like a club atmosphere, Cape Verde, because they've had that group together for 5 or 6 years. He insists on them speaking Creole in the get-togethers. There's been a real sense of unity there. They've got some live wires as well. Ryan Mendes, who was meant to be the next big thing at one stage, but he's had some injuries. Dylan Livramento scored some important goals in qualifying. So they've got players who could cause issues here and there. But look, Spain are one of the favourites for a reason. I think they've got great depth. Actually, I think they've got lots of different options. You only have to look at the goalkeeping scenario to think that, Harry, I know you'll be scratching your head at how David Raya is effectively third choice probably, but it kind of taps into one of the big strengths of Spain and also one of the potential weaknesses. And what I mean is, Unai Simon is his guy, right, in goal. And the reason he's his guy is because he was his goalkeeper at youth level, and he's been with these guys all the way through. So there's a real bond there, there's a real trust, and Unai Simon was his Euro-winning goalkeeper. I think he's another that's got a mistake in him. I would rather have Joan Garcia or David Raya, personally, but there are guys that trust the coach and he trusts them, and sometimes that kind of supersedes everything, and you still get that feeling that Luis de la Fuente, who I think's changed how we view coaching, in terms of a guy coming in without a club background behind him, really, that's his big strength, that the players really trust him.
Yeah, Master, I can't get my head around that thing. The David Raya thing, it drives me crazy, and I shouldn't care, so I'm going to try and sort of remove myself from being wound up about it. But it is interesting what Kevin says there, and it does feel like with De La Fuente, like you mentioned, Kev, his background means that, he's very sort of tuned into the core Spanish football principles, if you like. And I actually think in a weird way that helps, because when the players come in from their, respective clubs, they know what they're expected to do. There isn't that kind of confusion with regards to their identity as a team. It's the Spanish way, and he sort of embodies that, having sort of come up through the youth ranks. I think that's quite important and one of their biggest strengths, actually.
Yeah, and I think he's put a bit of a twist on that, in the sense that it's not possession for possession's sake. There is more of a tempo to it. They press very, very well without the ball. Now, that's interesting in this tournament, because can you always do that? Can you always press to that degree? I'm not sure they're going to be able to. But because they can also keep the ball, that's going to help them as well. So I think they are going to mix and match depending on what the conditions are and depending who the opponents are. I'd be very surprised. I mean, I might be totally wrong about this, but I'd be very surprised if we see either Nico Williams or Lamine Yamal from the start. I think that'd be completely unnecessary. Both of them have had injury problems of late. There's no need to start them. I mean, you could probably give them a rest entirely if you really wanted, with all respect to Cape Verde. And they have guys in that front line that I really like. Oyarzabal at Real Sociedad's had a great season. They've just won the Copa del Rey. Great penalty taker, really clever player, scored the winning goal in the Euro final. Ferran Torres has come off a great season with Barcelona. Alex Baena's smart. So they've got lots of options there.
Yeah, Oyarzabal I think could be a sleeper pick for the for Golden Boot. I think he's someone that could be very dangerous up top for Spain. But I do want to go back real quick to last night's Sweden versus Tunisia match. And this is Sweden side. I think last time we were on, I was very critical of the UEFA qualifications aspect of it, of them making it through because of the Nations League and what a poor qualifiers they had up until they got to the playoff. But the question has always been with Sweden, can they get this Gyökeres-Isak duo to work together? And against Tunisia, it looked like it's made significant strides from the last time we saw them together on the pitch with Sweden.
Yeah, they look really sharp. Tunisia were very obliging. So that has to be borne in mind, because the Tunisia performance was so bad that they've sacked their coach, Sabri Lamouchi, after just one game. So that gives you an idea of how disappointed they were with that display. But lots of positives. I thought what was good was that Gyökeres and Isak seemed to work as a pairing. There was a moment, actually, when they had a breakaway where Gyökeres delayed the pass too long, and by the time he played it to Isak, Isak was offside. But that kind of stuff will work itself out. They'll work on that, I'm sure. They're potentially a really good partnership. Nugred, I think, is good behind them. They've got some great quality in midfield as well. The goals from Mayari were outrageous. I was trying to work out what I thought was the better hit, the first one and the second one. I think probably the second. But, two great hits. And they've got a set-piece threat as well. That's important. They're not going to find every team as open in transition as Tunisia were. But it is a weapon for them. And if they come up against a low block, maybe it'll be a set-piece that opens them up. I still think defensively there are issues there. I still think you can get at them, but yeah, they're a good side, and that was the start they needed, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like they're a top-heavy side in that forward line. I mean, Premier League winning striker leading the line alongside Alexander Isak. What do you expect? Of course, they're going to be a threat at the top end of the pitch.
Kevin, you might mention that, Harry.
Yeah, I had to get it in. Over in Seattle, we've got a massive clash between Belgium and Egypt. It feels like Belgium are moving past the whole kind of golden generation sort of added pressure that seemed to follow them into tournaments over the last few years. Is that fair to say, do you think? I mean, there's still lots of talented players there, but I felt like the last few tournaments we kept looking at Belgium and going, well, it's now or never. Maybe the removal of that pressure, given that the team's changed quite a bit, maybe that helps, does it?
Yeah, a little bit. My feeling was always that the golden generation thing was really overblown. I've always felt that you could never have looked at that squad and felt it was a team that had a divine right to win anything. And they did have a World Cup under Roberto Martinez where they came close. They beat Brazil, they were in the semis, edged out by France, and that was maybe their biggest opportunity to do something. They've still got quality players. Doku, I think, is one of the best one-on-one wingers around. Although, being the president of the Diamande Appreciation Society, I would obviously put him up there as well. But they've still got Doku. My big question is, are the big hitters fit? Kevin De Bruyne has had a massive chunk of the season where he's missed out with injury. He's had that hamstring problem. Romelu Lukaku barely played at all. So they're two big players there. Defensively, I think they're weak. I think there are problems there. It helps they've got the best goalkeeper at the tournament in Thibaut Courtois. He might have to get them out of jail quite a bit, I think. There's talent there. I like Takei Lara. I've always liked him. There is talent there. Tielemans is a great midfielder. So they should progress. Are they going to win it? I would be gobsmacked if they even got to the semis, to be honest.
Kevin, thank you very, very much, mate. I really appreciate your time. Go and get yourself some sleep before today's action begins.
Cheers, guys.
Thank you as always. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Still to come on today's show, we've got Michael Lahoud joining us in just a little bit as well. Lots still to come on the S Word. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
No worries.
From kickoff to the full-time whistle,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
S Word.
Featuring Will Gavin and Master Tesfacian.
And a squad of big-name contributors.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Good morning and welcome back to the S Word, live on the talkSPORT S Word and talkSPORT YouTube channels. Master Tesfacian is alongside me. He's done it.
I pulled a Will. Unfortunately, Will Gavin, he's not with us today, and I always make fun of him for dropping things, Harry. And during that interview, I dropped my phone.
Can I just make sure you're all right? Was it the phone? As long as it was the phone, we're good.
It was the phone, thankfully. It wasn't. The glass of water's still here, thankfully. I had a long night, as you would imagine, here in New York City, celebrating, taking in the vibes of the World Cup. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those mornings.
Absolutely.
As it will be for the next month.
And it's great to have you alongside me, even if we are on opposite sides of the pond at the moment. Master's over in NYC, taking it all in.
It's great doing the show. We've had you on before as a guest, obviously during the Arsenal beautiful season as it was. And so being able to do a show with you, man, super excited about this.
It is my honour, my friend. It is my honour. Right, let's talk about the US men's national team, shall we? Because I knew that was coming. It was a special night. It really, really was. And you know, we've been joking throughout the show about sort of staying up late at night and how we don't have any right on this side of the pond to complain about the kickoff times and all that. This was one of the games that I specifically made an effort to make sure that I got up and watched live, because I was, more than anything, I was intrigued to see how the US men's national team would get on. And the reason for that is because it felt like this World Cup is something that they've been building up to for a long time. They're hosting, obviously, which adds to it. But Mauricio Pochettino coming in, a big name coach who's made his name in European football, going over, taking on that job with a view to building towards the tournament. The host nation factor, meaning that for me, there was more pressure than there normally is on the US going into a World Cup. All the fanfare around it meant that there was going to be more eyes on them. And I have to say, hand on my heart, I did worry that they were going to slip up. I did. I wondered if the pressure was going to be too much. Yet instead, they went out, they blew Paraguay away. They were brilliant from start to finish. And I can imagine over there, people are still buzzing. Or smashing.
We're not Knicks fans. We haven't broken a bunch of things yet, you know. But if they continue the performance that they had against Paraguay, look, all bets are off, because I truly feel for one of the few times in my life this entire country is galvanized by the U.S. men's national team. And they played with a performance that they had something to prove, but it's a microcosm of this country. We collectively all have something to prove in this sport, in this tournament, that not only do we belong, but we are improving and excelling in a nation that you do not want to face. And I think they provided that idea against Paraguay, and it is seeping through amongst all the conversations I'm having. Everywhere I'm, whether I'm in LA, whether I'm in New York, in the group chats, all across this country, all around the world, people continue to talk to me about that performance the U.S. men's national team put on, and projecting and extrapolating what the possibilities are moving forward. And that, I couldn't be happier, man. I really couldn't. It was a very windy, chaotic road getting to this World Cup for many reasons, whether it was the coaching situation, whether it was the players not performing to their level, whether it was obviously the political situation going on, the ticket situation. There was a lot just going on that, of course, I had the infamous rant last week of just I just was sick of it. I like this, and I think a big reason of that rant was we have been, for those that really care about the sport in this country, we have been dreaming about this moment literally for well over a decade, and for many people since 1994, to be back in this position to host the biggest tournament in the world. And it just felt like there was never wind beneath our sails. There was never that momentum to keep going up until that match. And so the pressure that I think everyone collectively was feeling in this country was amounting, and the fears and the concerns and the anxiety of, man, will the U.S. perform well? Will we be a great host? Like, what is going to happen? And I think that performance truly was the moment of just calming all concerns, taking the pressure off of the players, the team, but also of just the nation. And, you know, being able to just enjoy this moment, enjoying being able to be the host nation, and enjoying the fact that, hey, we've got a team that could potentially do something, Harry, and that level of excitement, wherever it goes and however far it goes, is all I could really ask for from this team. And they delivered that in the first match. And now, Harry, I'm changing my plans, man. I was going to try and go back at some point to London to sit beside you and all the great other hosts at talkSPORT. But after that match, I literally called Will and I'm like, bro, I have to stay here. The energy here is just incredible. And the excitement, the energy, it truly is going to be one of those moments that I'll be able to tell my kids and, you know, tell future generations that, hey, I was there for that USA Paraguay match. And Harry, I'll be coming from New York now, and I'm planning to go to Seattle for that USA-Australia match, just so I can continue that excitement, that feeling, and being around the other fans, which I expect an incredible atmosphere in Seattle. Like, I just want to be a part of this USA journey for the entire way, and wherever it goes. I'm just very grateful that they're providing this level of joy, not just for myself, but for literally hundreds of millions of Americans across this country.
Yeah, it was an amazing start, and you're right to highlight, you know, some of the concerns that people had pre-tournament and all the rest of it. But one of the other factors I would like to highlight that I don't think's been talked about enough, by the way, in the build-up to this tournament from a US point of view, is that when you're the host nation and you don't have to qualify, it's actually very difficult to prepare for a tournament because you don't have that set run of fixtures. You don't have the competitive matches to really kind of put things to the test in a competitive environment. What you end up with is a bunch of friendlies from which you can't really take that much away. And I think that feeds into the uncertainty and then fuels the anxiety that you might feel as a national team going into a tournament that you're hosting. And actually, when I think back to previous examples, I don't think the US are the only team that have built up to a home tournament where people were wondering what they were going to get on like. I think this is something that happens when you're the host, and the preparation process, if you like, is very, very different. We do have to talk about following Balogun. I mean,
real quick though, I think to your point though, you're spot on with that, absolutely. And that was the biggest concern, is like, how would they be able to do that? And obviously changing coaches in that process as well over the last 4 years, and some of the players may not be in the best form or injury wise as well. But in the moments in which they intentionally scheduled to try and get that international competition flavor, the biggest one was Copa America, and they couldn't make it out the group stage. And I think from that point, that's kind of where the pessimism and the anxiety went through the roof. And there was a Gold Cup tournament last summer in North America in which it was a very rotated, young, inexperienced side that was getting competition experience. That, again, you never knew from the depth perspective of things if any of those players would be needed for this World Cup. So it was a good idea in theory, but that also didn't help because they obviously fell short to Mexico in the final, and they fell short to Mexico, and Mexico being able to lift the Gold Cup. So even in the moments in which they had intentionally scheduled to try and give that competitive juices and competitive spirit in some competitions with the U.S. men's national team, it wasn't to the delivering expectation that we had that could truly give us the optimism, give us the hope, give us the belief that, hey, this team is not one you want to be messed with. But lo and behold, like every other American, Harry, we tend to procrastinate, and we tend to wait till the final minutes and the final seconds to get things done, and this team is embodying America through and through. Absolutely.
We were going to talk following Balogun, and we will in just a moment, but we've got an exclusive bit of news that's just come through via talksport.com. So I'm going to read this to you, and I want to get your take on this, Master. So Donald Trump has been given license to join the World Cup winners in their trophy lift, as he did at the Club World Cup. talkSPORT understands FIFA have no objection to Trump breaking the presentation protocol and handing the World Cup trophy directly to the winning captain and remaining in the thick of the celebrations. What's your reaction to this? Because from a European perspective, I have to say that when this happened at the Club World Cup, this took people back a little bit. This surprised people. And we've just heard that FIFA have got no objection to Donald Trump doing the same thing when it comes to the World Cup final. What's your take?
I think this is absolutely ridiculous. It's like, with Gianni Infantino and FIFA, at some point, just draw a line. Like, they're allowing this to, on one side of the coin, you want to say that this isn't a political game. This is a game for everyone. And then on the other side of the coin, you do things like this. Like, like pick a side. Like, what do you want this to be political? Because if so, then allow Haiti to wear the national kits in which they designed with the flag emblem on the jersey, because that got banned because it was taken as a political act. You cannot do that to Haiti, and then on the flip side, allow Donald Trump to be on stage handing the trophy and being part of the celebrations with the winners. It was so uncomfortable and so awkward when Chelsea had to figure out what is going on with Reece James and Cole Palmer giving them just an absolute blank stare to Donald Trump as he handed the trophy and did not want to get off stage. And now you're presenting yourself with another situation as well again. Like, Harry, what happens if Spain ends up winning this World Cup? And we know how critical they've been of this administration and the actions that they've taken. Do you think they're going to want Donald Trump to be on stage with that, with all the photos that come from this and iconic moments when you see your nation lifting up that World Cup trophy and seeing Donald Trump in the middle of your nation's celebrations? Like, this is another unfortunate, terrible decision by FIFA, and at some point they're gonna have to draw the line and say enough is enough. Like, but to this point we have yet to see that happen, and it's driving me insane because America gets blamed for all this stuff, but FIFA's the one allowing it to happen.
Yeah, I completely agree that the line needs to be drawn. The Club World Cup, I don't think people saw it as big a deal because it was the Club World Cup and it was a competition that people were divided on here with regards to its importance, right? But when it comes to the FIFA World Cup, I think without getting too political, had Donald Trump been a little bit more and the administration been a little bit more accommodating with some of the other things that FIFA have had to take the embarrassment for, then I think maybe there'd be people would say okay. But the way that it's all gone, where he's not been willing and there's not been a compromise on certain things that are the norm in FIFA World Cups, I think that's why this is going to rub people up the wrong way. And look, I'm sure there's going to be lots of fallout to this decision over the coming days, and of course we'll keep
It falls in line, though. Obviously, 2022 World Cup, when Lionel Messi was garnering the robe from the Sheikh of Qatar, and that was controversial as well. I don't want to see any of that in the celebration.
Agreed.
I don't care if it's Donald Trump. I don't care if it's Barack Obama. Like, I don't care if it's a king, an emperor, a monarchy. I do not care. I do not want to see any of any political administration members or involved in the World Cup celebrations when a nation is celebrating lifting the World Cup trophy. I want that to be all about the nation, seeing their celebration, seeing their joys, seeing the unfortunate disappointment from the runners-up, and experiencing and feeling and soaking in as if I was there in the stadium watching the scenes and the highlights. The simple fact that even for 30 seconds or 45 seconds or whatever it is of camera time that political members, presidents, monarchies, et cetera, take from those celebrations is 30 or 45 seconds that I don't get to see, and the global watching football fan does not get to see of those moments from the fans' celebrations, from the coaching, from the players that we truly came here to watch. We did not come here to watch Donald Trump hand over a trophy. We did not come to watch Lionel Messi garnering a robe as he's being celebrated and touted, winning the only World Cup that he's had so far, and every single picture having that robe and garment being involved in that. We do not want to see that. We want to see the colors, the crests, the representation of the nations that they came here to represent, and the ones that are celebrating with joy either in the stadium or around the world. That's what we came for. Get rid of all the other nonsense. We did not come here for that.
Absolutely. If football truly is for everyone, then you have to remove every political aspect from it, in my opinion. And I think, unfortunately, this is where those lines are being crossed again. We were going to talk Folarin Balogun, so let's do that, because his performance was outstanding. As someone who watched him as he grew up as a player and really developed, I have to say at times I wasn't sure what his level was. I wasn't sure whether he'd go to this level. He's playing his football over in France now, where he's doing very, very well. But to score 2 goals, not just 2 goals, but 2 goals of that quality in a World Cup game where there was a lot of pressure around the US men's national team, where there was that fanfare and expectation, I thought was really impressive. Both finishes were exquisite, weren't they?
They were wonderful, man. And the one in particular where he just... the patience he had in the box, hitting top bins, curling it right before halftime. Harry, you were there at that Burnley-Arsenal match, so you can understand the sentiment. When Kai scored right before halftime, and the jubilation that you felt at halftime in the concourse as everyone's singing 1-0 to the Arsenal, and just this full hope and optimism and this belief that, this Premier League is ours. Balogun scoring that goal 3-0 right before halftime was the American equivalent of that. And again, I'm not saying they're going to win the World Cup, but it was the one that took it over the top, where at halftime, the buzz, the anticipation, the excitement, the hope, and the optimism flooded the entire stadium and flooded this country with that top bins kick. And that, to me, is a signal and a statement that Balogun was able to make that we desperately needed. We went on this ridiculous recruiting trip when Balogun was deciding who to play for, where he was touted all across America, and U.S. M&T fans like myself were on Twitter just, hey, commit to America, we need a striker. We were doing everything we can to try and sweeten the deal for him to come play for us, and he absolutely paid it off in that first match, and I'm hoping this is more to come, because this could be the possibility if he continues this form, Harry. And obviously we saw him a bit at Arsenal, but it wasn't to this extent of where he is right now and what he displayed against Paraguay. But if he continues on this trajectory throughout this World Cup, I mean, we could be looking at Balogun making a big-time move in Europe this summer, which I don't know how many people were willing to say that at the start of this tournament. Yeah, absolutely. It felt like, for him to take the next step in his career, he probably had to take a step back before he could take a step forwards again. Now, obviously, he's still playing in one of Europe's top 5 leagues, and he's still playing at a very reputable club. But I think the pathway 100%. At Arsenal wasn't there for him, right? And to make that move to France was a good one. And if you do it on the World Cup stage, I mean, how many players have we seen over the years who have had an amazing World Cup, then put themselves in the shop window? I mean, there's some that, that sort of World Cup brilliance has kind of got them a move that maybe bigger picture came too soon for them or was too big for them. James Rodriguez is the one that always sort of sticks in my mind. He's the epitome of that. Yeah, absolutely. Poster boy of that. He is indeed, absolutely. But yeah, look, it is fantastic to see him doing well. But what I was really impressed with, and I know it's something you associate with Mauricio Pochettino anyway, was the style of play. There was no apprehension, there was no cautiousness, and I know the early goal helped. It did help in terms of just setting the tone and relaxing everybody. But it was the swashbuckling brand of football that we saw from the US that I have to say really took me aback. It took me aback too, because we have not seen that under Pochettino often. We saw it at the start when he first came there, because again, it was a huge shift from Berhalter ball, which was basically trying to win 1-0 and being very, trying to be ball dominant and possessing the ball as much, being very defensively sound. But it wasn't the most exciting type of style of play. And as soon as, the U.S. would concede a goal, it would pretty much, they lacked so much creativity and options forward that it was all but over. If the U.S. was not able to score the first goal, there was very little hope, if any, that they were able to pull out any sort of result from a match. And so that was the reason why people like myself wanted Pochettino, because we wanted that open style of play. We wanted something more modern, something that reflected truly the transcendence of American players in Europe and the style of play, obviously, that we saw a couple years ago, and even still to this day, even though it's becoming a bit more of set pieces and a bit more cagey these days in Europe. But Pochettino provided that, and we're seeing that with this back five with Dest and Anthony Robinson as the wing backs. The connections that you see with Pulisic, with Weston McKennie, who I think has been incredibly underrated. He's been my favorite player on this team for quite some time now. He's been continuously producing at Juventus and continues to fall under the radar in terms of what his production, and having Balogun up top obviously is a massive difference maker. So again, as much as it caught you off guard, Harry, it caught me off guard, because I did not expect to see that from this side in the dominant way that they did against a Paraguay side, in which a lot of people who are gonna knock the U.S. and be like, hey, it's Paraguay, this, and this. What you saw from Ecuador in terms of defensively and how great they were the best defense in South America during World Cup qualifiers. Paraguay was tied for second with Argentina. So, you could think whatever you want to about Paraguay, but this is a solid South American side that we expected to provide more of a fight. And as the coach of Paraguay said as well, tactically speaking and everything they did, it just overwhelmed them.
I think when you look at the South American qualification section, I think it's the most difficult one in the world to get through. So just given sort of relative to the number of positions there are available and good teams. So I will never look at a team that makes it through that section and say, you know what, they don't deserve it or they're not good enough to compete at that level. Coming up next on the show.
A lot of them make it now with the expanded tournament. A lot of South Americans make it now.
Yeah,
so
true. But
it's been a huge conversation right now in terms of that, and the amount of South American teams that make it and the performance that they've had so far to this tournament is, you know, is it a bit disproportionate? I don't know. It's more of a conversation to have post World Cup, but it is very fascinating, the different confederations and the different approaches they took to this expanded tournament with their qualifications and maybe the adjustments and the improvements they make in 2030. And I look at South America as one. I also look at UEFA as another one as well with the Nations League situation with Sweden, but that is a subject for another day.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots to unpack there when it comes to the formats, qualifications, and all the rest of it. We're not going to be doing that today. We'll do that another day. Maybe. Who knows?
No.
Coming up next on the show, we're going to be launching a brand new segment, the Fan Appreciation Society, as well as speaking to African football expert Michael Lahoud.
Got to show love to Scotland, baby. Come on.
Absolutely. He's part of the Tartan Army these days, old master.
Hey, come on.
You're watching the S Word.
No Scotland, no party. That's music in my ears, baby.
Absolutely. You're watching the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
Big name reaction from both sides of the pond.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Kickoff to the full-time whistle.
Don't say the S word. Say the F word. Football.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
Welcome back to the S Word, powered by talkSPORT. Now it's time for a brand new segment, the Fan Appreciation Society, where we'll show you some of the best clips of what fans from all over the world have been getting up to during this World Cup and celebrate what makes this game so special.
Come on, Harry. It's been amazing. It has been, I don't know if you've been keeping up with some of the social media clips and stuff that you've seen around North America, but I am doom scrolling, and I haven't doom scrolled on social media in so long. But this World Cup has already provided so many amazing viral moments that I don't want to miss them. I don't want to miss the next Japanese fan that's having a blast in America, or the next Korean fan that's like making out with a random Mexican chick in Mexico City. It's just the range of like just incredible moments that we're seeing amongst cultures, just like appreciating each other in so many different ways. Like only the World Cup can do this.
Absolutely. Only the World Cup can deliver such moments and such special connections as well. Look, as you're wearing your Scotland shirt and you are an honorary member of the Tartan Army at the moment, there's only really one place to start. So let's have a look at this clip of the Tartan Army marching their way to Fenway Park in their thousands. This is just brilliant. The bagpipes, the outfits, the kilts, everything. This is just what it's all about. And you know what? Scotland haven't been in a World Cup for such a long time prior to this one. And this tournament has reminded me what a special fan base they've got and how much value they add to a tournament. There's never any trouble. There's never any issues from what we can see. It's just pure joy and coming together. I think it's brilliant.
It is truly epitomized. No Scotland, no party. I kept hearing that before the World Cup, and I'm like, okay, I've got a lot of amazing Scottish friends that are just unbelievable people, and I know that we like to have a good time together. But no Scotland, no party. It's setting a high bar for a nation that loves to party, and they have not only just exceeded that bar, they have set the new standard of I think what Americans expect when it comes to this beautiful sport. Like it should look like Scotland. It should look like this. It should feel like this. It should be a complete takeover of a city, of a region, and putting your imprint, putting your mark. And letting people know who you are, and like you said, in the most respectful manner. Harry, they went to Fenway Park, man. Like that is a ballpark that is 112 years old. 114 years old. It was built in 1912. That is one of the most historic and prestigious sporting venues that we have in this country. And for them to take their off day to go out there and create create an atmosphere that, again, for baseball fans, we don't see those kind of atmospheres until October, till playoff baseball, and they're providing that on a random day in June. It has blown my mind being able to see their interpretation on baseball, and I think that's the beautiful part about this, is that we're seeing these different interpretations of this sport, and Scotland is not only putting their imprint on football, but they're also putting their imprint on America's pastime. It's such a beautiful experience that I've had this kit for a long time now, and I've yet to break it out. This is the first day I'm wearing it. And I truly am appreciative of what Scotland has contributed in terms of this World Cup and providing that atmosphere.
Have you spoken to many Scotland fans out and about in the States?
They haven't. I mean, not in the States. I know a lot more, obviously, in the UK. Shout out to my good friend Stefano, who's been, telling me a lot about Scotland, and obviously is one of my good friends. So he's kind of my go-to source when it comes to understanding how this atmosphere and experience was going to be. But I think they're slowly trickling their way down. So they're still in Boston right now, but I think they're slowly going to work their way down and continue to follow Scotland as they progress and advance throughout this tournament. So. Lo and behold, I'm sure that New York invasion is going to be happening here pretty soon. So
if there's one thing that I've learned about Scotland fans over the years, is they will pop up everywhere, mate. Don't worry, they're coming your way. Let's move on. Let's move on to the next clip.
What do you think of it, though? I mean, what have you seen? I mean, I'm curious from your perspective. How have you appreciated it? Because obviously here there was a lot of talk of like whether America would be welcoming and obviously understanding because of the visa issues that are still ongoing. But I'm curious what your perspective, and I guess we'll start with Scotland. Like, what has been your vantage point from abroad and what you've seen from these clips?
It looks great to me. And I've been lucky enough to work at tournaments in recent years and to be on the ground for the entire duration of a tournament. And I always find that, there's always a little bit of apprehension about what the atmosphere and the mood's going to be like, and the coming together of all these different cultures and people coming from different places with different allegiances, etc., etc. And I've always just found the atmospheres to be amazing. So unless I see something that suggests that's not the case, that is kind of my default setting in terms of how these things go. In my mind, they go well. People come together, people celebrate together, and I've not seen any issues, barring one or two minor little things at previous tournaments I've covered. So, I don't expect it to be, any different over in the US. But I do want to run this clip from the Dutch fans in Dallas, and there's a special reason.
They've been crazy.
Why I want to run this one. Let's have the clip because it is fantastic. So back at the last European Championships, I went to cover the Netherlands game against England, and I got caught up in the middle of one of these. I've got a video on my phone which I'll send to you on WhatsApp later on, where I was literally in the middle of one of these with a dance from left to right, and it was just incredible. If you don't mind your clothes getting soaked in beer, then they're absolutely great fun and absolutely fantastic. But the orange colour as well, there's something about the Dutch orange that for me just symbolizes tournament football, and if they're not there, I think it is a big miss.
And Harry, I'm from Dallas, so I have been on these streets so many times. In that background, you see that brick building. That's the old Texas Rangers ballpark, the ballpark of Arlington, which is where I fell in love with baseball and the first ever sporting event I ever went to. They moved across the street to a brand new facility a couple years ago, but that whole area composes of the old ballpark in Arlington, the new Ranger Stadium, and an AT&T Stadium down the street. So those are the same streets in which I celebrated a Texas Rangers parade. And to see the Dutch completely taking that over in that orange, it is a sight to behold. It generally brings me so much joy, because now it's presenting a new memory, a new experience into that environment that, again, I've had so many that have been so locally focused, that providing that atmosphere on an international stage in that orange that you talked about, Harry. Because another thing with that orange, Texans are used to orange because University of Texas obviously is a huge collegiate program, has the biggest athletic budget in the country, and they wear burnt orange. So there is a lot of burnt orange already as it is all across Texas. So it's been amazing to see those Texas fans now embracing the Dutch orange, which is a bit brighter, but wearing it well. So there's a lot of orange all across Texas. So they have been fitting in well, not just only in terms of the atmosphere, but also in terms of their attire. And that, to me, I couldn't be happier seeing that happening in my hometown. It's all my friends are having a blast. I saw a bunch of my friends being a part of that as well. They sent me footages and photos of being in the mix of that, and it's some of my reporter friends have been involved doing some of these viral interviews that you've seen. Man, I'm honestly speechless. Like it brings almost it makes me so emotional that it almost makes me like bring tears in my eyes, because that's what I had hoped for from this tournament, and I'm getting it all across this country.
It's brilliant as well, because they're also like bought into wearing the orange. Like when you go to a football game here in the UK, let's say you go to an Arsenal game, for argument's sake, we're both Arsenal supporters, you'll see some fans in a red shirt, some in a white shirt, some in a yellow shirt. With the Dutch, there's no exception. No. Everybody is in orange, and that is that, and there's no debate, which I love as well, because it really does have a great effect. Let's move on to another clip. Swedish fans partying at 4 a.m. after their victory over Tunisia. 4 a.m. It doesn't look like it's 4 a.m.
In Sweden?
Let's have a look.
In Sweden?
Let's have a look. Yep, in Stockholm.
Bro, there's no way that's 4 a.m., bro. There's look at that sunlight. Look at that sunlight.
I know. That's what's unique about that part of the world. It's just incredible.
Oh my God, man! They turned into a full rave. But hey, kudos to them, bro. If they were smashing goals in the same way in that opener, as it kind of probably felt the same way the U.S. did, except I wasn't up at 4 a.m. But we've talked a lot about the Norway and bro, Sweden has some unbelievable fans, man. Sweden has an incredible support. And again, not to bring up Arsenal again, but the Swedish fans that came by to support Victor Gyökeres and the celebrations and all the crazy flares they brought out, when I saw that, it changed my entire perspective of Swedish fans, because I had never really experienced them and been around them before. But that gave me a taste of what to expect from Sweden, because they are crazy for this sport, and that showed it at 4 a.m. and I'm sure there's more to come from those supporters.
Absolutely, I'm sure there will be. Let's move on to some Argentinian fans who were barbecuing despite the conditions not being ideal, shall we say. Look at that storm, but that's not going to stop them. Are you sure they're Argentinians and not Greeks? Because that's something that we need to. There's no way they're going to stop us from getting our barbecue on, and I love to see that. It's brilliant.
You know what's funny about that? That's actually the chefs for the Argentina national team. And so they're cooking up Argentina steaks and meals and stuff like that during that storm. And I want to provide some more context for you, Harry, because obviously they're based in Kansas City as well as England, and England's been going through the same severe thunderstorm issues that Argentina has throughout Kansas City. From Minnesota down to Texas, okay, it's a straight line of a couple states that includes obviously the Kansas City region. We call that in America Tornado Alley, because during this time of year, around the spring, early summertime, it can create some hellacious thunderstorms, some crazy flooding, and some really severe tornadoes. And if you're from the area, you're accustomed to it. You hear the sirens. You know what to do. You're watching. You're getting your notifications, your alerts. But if you've been around it so long, sometimes you'll hear the sirens and be like, this one ain't serious. It's fine. You should put your phone down. And obviously, you want to make sure that you're safe, all these different things. But there's a level of intuition that you have that I'm okay with this one. I'm staying on the couch. I don't need to go run to the basement or to the bathroom. Argentina has been in this country for 4 or 5 days and already moving as like a level 5 tornado alley expert in terms of their understanding. They're hearing the sirens in the background. They're like, let's finish up these steaks real quick before we head back inside.
Yeah, I love that. It's just that kind of blasé approach to everything. But listen, a barbecue's very important, to be fair, and it's got to be done right.
100%.
So, no weather is going to stop an Argentinian having a good barbecue, that's for sure. But it's just brilliant to see. And the setup as well. I mean, that's a setup that I'm very envious of. Love it. It's brilliant.
And a lot of people from Kansas City probably looked at that and said game recognized game, because Kansas City is one of the best cities known for barbecue in the States. So they will throw down on some 16-hour briskets out there. It is such a culture of grilling and barbecue in Kansas City, where you're almost shocked when you come across a person from Kansas City that doesn't know how to cook a brisket. Like it is passed on to you from generation to generation. And so Argentina is fitting right in. And maybe they'll throw in a brisket or here or there, you know what I'm saying, as part of their meals, and take some of the cuisine ideas from Oklahoma Joe's or Q39 or some of the other amazing barbecue spots that you find in Kansas City.
Just very quickly, in terms of New York City, where you're at right now, what would you say the majority, or who would you say the majority of supporters that you've seen sort of knocking around are there to follow? Because, I can imagine there's people from all over the world coming together in various parts of the States, and I'm sure there's going to be, fans that come specifically to see their team that are playing in the city, etc., etc. But who have you spotted the most of in terms of a set of supporters?
Man, I was really amazed by Ecuador yesterday. They had an incredible showing and display. And one other thing I haven't even mentioned, I'm glad you asked this. I'm so glad you asked this, because at the watch party that I was at with Adidas, right above us is the Brooklyn Bridge, okay? And I kept hearing a bunch of drums. And I didn't know if it was like some other fans in the area or whatever, but it felt like I was hearing it above me. And I did not know if it was a speaker. It took me the longest to figure that out. 10 or 15 minutes later, I walk down and I look up and I see a bunch of yellow flags waving. The Brazilian fans decided to do a march of celebration across the Brooklyn Bridge during the day. And they just parked up right at the middle of the Brooklyn Bridge, celebrating, screaming, chanting, waving flags, playing drums, playing any other instruments. And I promise you, Harry, they were doing this for about a good hour before they moved off that bridge.
What were they celebrating? Narrowly avoiding Morocco beating?
It's Brazil. They don't need much of a reason to celebrate. It could be 1-0. It could be 1-1. It could be 3-0.
After that,
the only time they don't celebrate.
The only time they don't celebrate.
The only time they don't celebrate is when they lose 7-1 to Germany. But beyond that, I think they were just soaking in the atmosphere and the environment. Probably those Brazilians that flew in, but also a huge Brazilian population in New York and in the Northeast that are just excited that their team is in town, their nation's in town. They get a chance to experience it and celebrate it, and showing to New York and to the entire world what Brazilian football is all about.
Yeah, I think that's really, really interesting, because Yeah, it's interesting to gauge, who's come from abroad and who's travelled and who are sort of fans of a particular nation that are based in the US, and that naturally is going to inflate those numbers, isn't it? Look, that was the Fan Appreciation Society. Really enjoyed that. Some great clips, some great insight.
Hopefully we do it again.
Yep, happily do it again. Some great insight as well from Master, who's on the ground over in New York City at the moment. Coming up in the final section of the show, we'll be speaking to African football expert Michael Lahoud. You're listening to the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
From the touchline to the terraces,
talkSPORT presents
the S Word.
presents
the S Word.
Get your full-on football fix from across the football galaxy.
The S Word
from talkSPORT.
I don't want to talk, I just want to enjoy the song. This is the S Word, powered by talkSPORT with myself, Harry Simiyu, and Master Sebastian. Now, it's been a mixed start so far for the African nations in the opening week of the World Cup, and I'm delighted to say, to help guide us through, is a massive friend of the show, African football expert Michael Lahoud. Michael, how are you, my friend?
Hold on. First and foremost, I'm joined by probably the only two Arsenal fans that I'll ever say that I like on planet Earth. Harry, I'm a big fan of yours. I've been following your work for a while.
Thank you, man.
This is an honor. And Master, I know you too well, man. So that's not an honor.
I don't want to get drawn into the why everybody hates Arsenal fans debate because we could be here all day.
I did that last night with the United fans. I don't want to repeat that.
We'll leave that alone. We'll leave that alone. Michael, let's get into it then. Let's start with Ivory Coast because the victory that they produced last night, the moment that they produced to win the game late on, was one of the standout moments of the World Cup so far. It was a really hard-fought game between Côte d'Ivoire and, of course, Ecuador. What did you make of their performance? And are they real sort of serious contenders in this World Cup? Maybe not to win the thing, but to go far.
Yeah, typically when we talk about African football, we think of the juggernauts that are Nigeria, who Nigerians will be on the beach or on the couch somewhere because they're not good enough to be at the World Cup. And I'll say it again, Nigerians, if you don't like what I say, come at me. I'll be waiting. You're not part of this tournament. Now I've gotten that rant out the way.
You are poking the bear, Michael.
You think of the Ghanaians, right? But in my opinion, this is a Côte d'Ivoire side that needs to be taken very seriously. And I think they really announced themselves to the world a couple of years ago at the African Cup of Nations when they won it against all odds with this very manager, Emir Spy. Now, this isn't the African Cup of Nations champions of yesteryear that had Yaya Touré, that had the likes of Gervinho, and even before that, that had Didier Drogba, who are all Premier League legends or Italian football legends. This is a new generation with a new sense of ambition, which leads me to this. I was really struck by how they managed the moments in this game, which was kind of a mirror image of the match we saw between Côte d'Ivoire and France, where in the first half, they didn't really start well. And it just left you wondering if their manager, Emir Spy, knew what he was doing. He made some controversial decisions, one of them being he left Amad Diallo, who's arguably one of their best players, on the bench. But Emir Spy, I think, might be playing chess while everyone's playing checkers, because in the World Cup, where I think this could be the difference maker, subs will make the difference this World Cup for me. It's not how you start the journey, it's how you finish. And on the day, Ivory Coast, they finished 2 teams.
Yeah, Mike, let's stick to this Amad Diallo situation because I do agree with you. Substitutions will make a huge difference in this tournament with the extension and how long it is. But, I mean, Ecuador hit the post 3 times. And to not have Amad Diallo in that starting 11, there's an idea that I had. I mean, they were also pretty fortunate. Because one of those goals goes in, and I'm not saying it would be a USA Paraguay situation, but it's a whole different situation that we're seeing here. I was really stunned that Amad Diallo was not on the pitch, and you saw the difference he made when he was on the pitch. He's as much as we talk about Yan Diomande, and of course he absolutely deserves all the praise, Amad Diallo has been the consistent production guy for Côte d'Ivoire here for at least the last year, 18 months.
Yeah, and you look at the numbers, and we were covering the match, and at halftime, I went on a mini rant, and literally that's why I started saying, what the hell is Emir Spy doing? This is a big decision, and just some numbers I'll throw at you. So since the last October, Amad Diallo scored 6 goals. That's the most of any player on the African continent for Côte d'Ivoire or any other team that wears a jersey representing an African nation. And just looking at Amad as a player, so many people want to crown Yan Diomande as a difference maker, but Amad Diallo is the true difference maker for this team in the final third. What I saw in the first half, and when I looked at the lineup, what Côte d'Ivoire could get in trouble with if they try and do this again against, say, a Germany, Amad brings a sense of composure that we don't see when he plays for Manchester United, but we definitely see when he plays for Les Elephants. The way he took the goal, Wilfried Singo deserves a lot of credit, because I know Wilfried Singo is kind of a wild card, but the way he just bursts down the right flank, if you look at Ahmad's run, Ahmad starts in the half space, cuts to the top of the box, and while so many of his other teammates were taking an extra touch or trying to almost walk the ball in the back of the net, Ahmad settled himself, took a deep breath, picked his corner, and slotted it in. And he looked much more like the guy who left Manchester United to go to the African Cup of Nations, a player who, in the midst of the Ruben Amorim debacle, I was thinking was arguably Manchester United's player of the season alongside Bruno Fernandes. Now, he came back from AFCON, and he didn't look the same player. So I'm really happy for him. And Emers Faye has a big decision to make. For me, one thing he cannot do again, he cannot leave Nicolas Pepe on the pitch as long as he did. I thought Pepe was poor, and he was very fortunate that Ahmad and the rest of the team bailed him out.
Nicolas Pepe, that's a name from the past, isn't it, Master? That we've moved on from, shall we say. We can't do a section on the African teams without dedicating a good chunk of time to Morocco, because I was blown away by their performance. I mean, they're the African champions. Not sure that they should be, but that's another debate for another day. But their performance against Brazil, particularly in that first half, was truly brilliant. I was blown away by how dominant and how in control they were, really.
Yeah, Master, I know you and I were talking about this game, and you can chime in if you agree or disagree with me, but it's amazing to see what investment and the change in infrastructure can do to one nation in Africa. And I've long since believed this, that Morocco is a country that's doing something different. And yes, we can look back to the last World Cup cycle and say, okay, well, it's obvious you're saying that because they made the World Cup semifinal. That wasn't a fluke. And Morocco won't be a fluke this tournament as well, because the biggest thing that they've done is the quality of recruitment, the intentionality of recruitment. Now we live in a world where to be African is not just to be from the continent of Africa. I looked this up. Morocco is the only nation in World Cup history to field a starting 11 of players who weren't even born in the country that they're representing. So you look at the difference maker on the day. Achraf Hakimi, the most popular player, the reigning African Football of the Year, was born in Madrid. You look at the goal scorer, Ismail Saibati. He was born in Barcelona, and he chooses to represent the country of his parents. And of course, we have to talk about the man who stole the show, the midfield maestro. It wasn't Casemiro. It wasn't Bruno Guimaraes. I don't even think it was Vini Jr. or any of the Brazilians. Definitely not Rafinha. It was Ayoub Bouadi. And Master, you and I both watch Ligue 1. And for all Ligue 1 fans out there, you'll know his name. And I think we're going to remember him very much by the end of this World Cup. Just the way he pulled the strings, the way he just had that high intellect of where the ball needed to go, this sense of composure. He's 18 years old, and he was the best player on the pitch. And Harry, I know there's a team near and dear to your heart who you're stacked in midfield, but if you're Mikel Arteta, at some point, if this kid keeps cooking this way, get the checkbook out and sign him.
In my dreams, we've already signed him, mate. It's not even a debate. Over to you, Master.
Yeah, I was really impressed with his composure. We've seen it obviously in Ligue 1, and we've seen it throughout Europe. But to be that composed on that stage, facing against Brazil in your first ever World Cup match, it was tremendous to see. But as much as we're giving credit to Morocco as well, I think this was the first match I saw where the hydration break really made a difference in the style of play and some of the tactics that we saw, where Brazil was able to change their midfield, and we saw Morocco wasn't. Brazil was able to find some good chances. I felt like, honestly, I thought Brazil had better quality chances in that match than Morocco did. And that goes back to my point that I need to ask you, Mike. Ezzouli's injury, the absence of a magician type of player like that, there was a lot of these chances that Morocco was able to create, but just lacking that final product. Will this hurt them? His absence, will Ezzouli's absence hurt Morocco at some point down the road?
Yeah, I think this is what you're talking about, of the lack of just being clinically defined by the Atlas Lions. I think we saw a massive imbalance where on the right-hand side, it's really Hakimi and Brahim Diaz or bust. And I also throw Saibati in there because he is a free roll. And Ismail Saibati, who I saw, he got the here we go today, new Bayern Munich player, definitely one to watch. And I think Manchester City fans will remember him because he put on an absolute clinic against the Citizens. But for Morocco, Mohamed Ouabi took a gamble because he went with Bilal El Khanous, who's not a natural winger, and we really saw him playing narrow. But on the other side for Brazil, Roger Ibanez, guys, Roger Ibanez should come and hang out with us in the studio because he was that ineffective. He was piss poor on the day. And I'm a big Roger Ibanez fan because I remember him at Roma because he played for Mourinho when they won the Conference League. So right player, wrong team, wrong time. Enough said about him. But it just made me wonder if El Khanous wasn't in that space where Ezzouli would be, Morocco would have won this game. Because Ezzouli's been 100%. That good for Morocco. He's been that good for Betis. I think he's been Betis' best player. But there's one player who, if you're Wabi, you need to put in on the left-hand side is a player that both of you know. He plays for a team up north, somewhere, not Newcastle. I think they finished above Newcastle. Oh, Sunderland. It's Chemsdean Talby. The kid's a baller. The kid plays on the left-hand side, mind you. Regis Labrie knew what he was doing. He's Belgian-born, but he's a difference maker. So look for him to start the very next match. I thought when he came in, the momentum you're talking about that Brazil had, as soon as Wabi brought him in, the momentum shifted back to Morocco. So the likes of him, I think, could be a big problem solver.
But the other parts of that, too, I mean, Morocco's bringing in 21-year-olds, 22-year-olds, 23-year-olds, and Brazil's bringing on 32-year-olds, 34-year-olds. So those young legs, again, I completely agree with you. There are some youngsters on this Moroccan side that will get the chance to express themselves in the absence of Azzouli. I just... Will they have the same flair? Will they have the same talent? I'm not sure. I'm trying to think if there's any other African nations that you want to talk about here. Should we ask about Tunisia? Because I did, unless you want to talk about someone else. Because me and Mike, we have been very torn on this Tunisia side, Harry, because they ran through their qualifiers. And truth be told, they had a very favorable draw in World Cup qualifiers. So there was always this question, is this team actually good? Or were they just very, very fortunate to get a great draw? Mike, we've got probably like about 90 seconds here. With this Tunisian side, that felt like their moment to try and get a point in this group, and they fell very, very short of that.
Yeah, I'm going to be very respectful as I can be, because I've hammered a couple people, players, teams, and countries so far. So
people that are not even at the tournament, by the way, as well.
I know. Geez, I might have to be careful, because I know there's Nigerians in the city of New York who definitely have my number and definitely know where I live about. But with Tunisia, respectfully, I think they are in a very dangerous place, because something that doesn't get talked about enough, and when you watch AFCON, you really start to see that sense of competition amongst North African countries. There's this feeling with Tunisia that the game is passing them by. They're playing football in the Stone Ages right now. We saw it against Sweden. This is a Tunisia side that the Carthage Eagles, they're known for being very defensive-minded. When you get to AFCONs, when you look at what they've done in their body of work, I mean, the last World Cup, I think they only gave up one goal, no? And they beat France in it. So defense has been the fulcrum and just what this team is built on. But you just see this inherent lack of quality, this inherent lack of ambition in Tunisian football. And that's now two managers in less than 1 year.
Yeah. Mike, I might have to say right now, if they sack this manager with the reports that they have, with the report that they have, I know we got to wrap up here, they could potentially have 5 new managers since the last World Cup.
Crazy.
It's just unbelievable. And we'll probably end on that note.
Crazy. Michael, we've run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us, mate, and for your fantastic insight. That is all from us today on the S Word. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you to the guys for welcoming me as well. Master, it's been a pleasure. And we'll be back at the same time tomorrow. There's plenty more where this came from. Don't forget to follow us on our socials at talkSPORT S Word. You've been watching the S Word, sponsored by Kalshi.
The S Word with Will Gavin and Master Tesfacion
from talkSPORT.